Okay, this tutorial I'm going to show you how to build a doghouse. And to get started, I've opened a new template in SketchUp. I made sure it was set feet and inches. To start out with, they have a sprite. You can delete that sprite by clicking and dragging a box from right to left and selecting the sprite and pushing the delete key on your keyboard. Alright, a couple things about SketchUp. It's free, and well, this version at least, and it's good for small projects. On the left, we have our select tool, an erase tool, a paint tool, a line tool, an arc, rectangle, and if you right click on these, or if you just click on the arrow on the right, it'll give you more options. So we have all these different tools. Okay, when you select a tool, like say I selected the paint bucket, it'll give you some options on the right regarding that tool. Like I can select some different colors here. I could even find some materials to use. Okay, so to navigate, I'm going to hit the select tool here. Just to zoom in and out, you scroll with the scroll wheel in and out. To pan, you have to click down here on this orbit tool and select the pan option. Okay, this is the only thing that I don't really like about SketchUp, is that you have to go over here to pan. And maybe there's a shortcut. I don't know if there is, let me know. But now I can pan. If I click in the scroll wheel and hold it, I can orbit. So that's a little bit about navigation. Okay, so let's talk about our design that we're going to be doing. Here's just a rough sketch that we made. Very rough, some rough dimensions. We're making this dog house for a mini Aussie, and we looked up the sizes that are recommended for a dog that size. And we came up with a 24 foot or 24 inch by 30 inch by 36 inch structure, and has a 12-inch door. So just some rough, this is a rough idea here, and it has a gambrel roof, kind of like the old barns that had 2 pitches. So very rough. I mean, the annotation is not right or anything on this, just to give us an idea. For a structure like this, we're going to want to start by making a floor, and the floor will be it'll consist of joists and a rim joist to kind of hold it all together. So for example, here's a floor, and we have here a rim joist that the joists are going to nail into. We have a rim joist here and a rim joist here on each end of our joists, and this will be like a balloon frame where we'll build off of this. We'll be able to have some insulation in here. It'll keep the house up off the ground, so we won't get the cold from the ground or the heat from the ground coming up into the doghouse. So that's our goal, is to make this part. Alright. Okay, so to get started, what I like to do is scroll in. So I'm zooming in to where all the axes meet. There's a green, blue, and red axis. And we want to start drawing. I like to use the origin here as my starting point. So I'm going to select the pencil tool and click here. Now, before I actually click and start drawing, we need to know the size of our wood that we're going to be using. We decided to make this really lightweight, and we didn't want to use 2x4s, so these are 1x4s. 1x4s, if you look at the actual size of them, so here's a little chart. A 1x4 is not really a 1x4, just like a 2x4 isn't really a 2x4. A 1x4 is a 3/4 inch by 3.5 inch. So those are the dimensions that we're working with our floor framing, with the joists and rim joist. So let's go back to our sketch. We'll start by drawing our first joist. If I click and let go on the origin and drag up, you can see that there's a line kind of following my pencil around. That line is on that blue line. You can't really see it. In the bottom right, it's giving me some length options. So if you look as I move it, it changes. We want to set our length, which for a 1x4, it's not really 4 inches. It's going to be 3.5. So I could type this as 3.5 if you look in the bottom right. Or I could do 3 space 1/2. So either of those will work, and then hit enter. Okay, so it drew, and I'm zoomed in enough that it made it pretty, it looks like it's really big. That's because I'm zoomed in. If yours is small, then zoom in a little more. I'm going to go to the right till my line turns red. That shows that it's following this red axis below. And we're going to make the width now, which is 3/4 of an inch. So once again, I could type 0.75, or I could type 3/4 for 3/4 and hit enter. Now I could type in again the length, or I could just go down until it snaps to this axis, and then I could click and snap it to the where we started. When I connect all those together, it makes one solid polyline, and it fills in the center. If it didn't fill in the center, it means that you're missing, there's a gap somewhere. It's not all closed, it's not a closed loop. So this is what we want, this closed loop that is 3/4 inches thick by 3.5 inches tall. Now that we have that, we can actually extrude our board. So I'm going to come over here to the left, and there is a push-pull tool that allows you to extrude. So if I click on that and select the blue area, click and let go, I can now push or pull that shape into a three-dimensional object. Now once again, in the bottom right, it's showing us a length here. If you remember back to our original drawing, we're doing this one here, so the length is going to be 36 inches. So I'm going to type in 36 and enter. And now I have my first board. Now, not quite done yet with this board. What I want to do is do my select option on the left, click and hold and drag a box from the right to the left till you've selected the entire board, and let go. It'll select everything. And we want to go over to our left and pick the paint bucket, and then to our right, and yours might look like this. Then you select over here in the browse, and you scroll all the way down to the W's, and we find wood, and we scroll down some more, and it gives us some wood options. We'll just pick the one in the bottom right. Then after you've selected that, you click on the actual board itself with your paint bucket. If I click in my scroll wheel and hold it and orbit, you can see that it painted the entire board. So that's good. I'm going to scroll back up and exit out of this and go back to my select tool. As you can see, it's still selected. If not, reselect it. I'm going to right click on it and say make a component. Now this component is a 1 inch thick by 4 inch by wide. Well, 1 inch thick by 4 inches tall by the length is 36 inches. 1 by 4 by 36. Or we could do 1 by 4 by 3 feet. If you want to get real technical, you can put in the inch symbol, which is up and left of enter, or just left of enter. If you hold in shift and push the key left of enter, and you could put in your inches. But I know what it is. I don't want to add more stuff than I have to. So and you could say it's a pine board, or if you want to do a description you can, but you don't have to. Okay, so I hit OK. What that does is it combines everything on this, so now it's one solid board. Okay, so now that this component is done, we want to duplicate it and make one more, because in our design we're going to have 2 of these rim joists. So it's still selected. If it wasn't, I could drag a box or click on it and select it, and you want to right click and say copy. Then you want to right click again and say right here paste. Now it wants you to select a starting point. So I want you to start right there on the corner of that last board that we just made and click there. Now it's going to space it a certain distance from that. And we can type that distance down here. But what we need to do is, so I actually got to click it twice and then it'll go. What we need to do is figure out what that distance is. So here is our rough sketch, and if you look, we just made these two end boards, and we need to, there's going to be a board in between them right here going this way. So we know that this distance we want is 30 inches, but we need to subtract the thickness of, well, let me draw this out so you can see it a little better. So right now we've drawn this one, we've copied it, and now we're going to space it over here. And we know that the distance between the two, between the edges, so this edge and this edge, needs to be 30 inches. So if we look at our board here, what is the space between these? Okay, from this corner to this corner, what's the space we need in between them if the whole thing needs to be 30? So we need to subtract the width of these boards. So what is it? Well, we know this one is 3/4 inch thick. This one is also 3/4 inch. So if we add 3/4 plus 3/4, we get 1.5, 1.5. So if I pull out my calculator, I'll show you the math on this. 3/4 is 0.75 plus 0.75, so it's 1.5, and we're going to subtract that 1.5 from our 30. So we're going to go minus 30. It's going to give us a negative because we kind of subtracted backwards. That's okay. So it's 28.5. So we know that the board in the middle here needs to be 28.5. So we need to space them 28.5 from this corner right here to this inside corner. From inside to inside is what it's doing. So we need 28.5. Okay. So I'm going to make sure it's on the red axis, and I'm going to bring it over this way just a little bit, and then I'm going to type in 28.5, and I'm going to hit enter, and then click my select tool, and then I'm going to scroll out, then come over here and pick my pan tool, and right there, those are spaced 28.5. Okay, so we're getting close to finish here. What we need to do now is we need to add our floor joists in, so they're attached to our rim joists, and we have one solid structure. So here we go. All we gotta do is just draw another one, and you can actually draw it on the face of this one. So if I click down here in this corner, I know it's the same height, so I clicked and clicked. Then I'm going to go over. I know that it's also 3/4 inches, so I type that in, hit enter. Then I'm going to go down, and here's a little shortcut or a little trick. Your arrow keys lock in the axes. So let's see, the up arrow is the blue one, and that's what we want. So if I hold in the blue one, it's going to try to keep it there on the blue. So it tells me that it's straight up and down. And I'm going to click down here. Then I'm going to close that loop, and it should give me a polyline, and it also should change color. So if you look, it changed color. Okay, so now all I need to do is extrude that, or push-pull, use a push-pull tool. So I'm going to scroll out. I'm going to select my push-pull tool. I'm going to select this inside of this, and I'm going to type in, we decided it was, what was our number again? 28.5. So I'm going to type in 28.5. If we did our math correct, it should line up perfect. I'm going to hit enter and scroll out. Now if you scroll out and then point your mouse over here where you want to look and scroll in, it'll kind of adjust your screen. Or you can get your pan tool. So yeah, that looks good. Now we just need to do the same thing that we did to our last one. We need to select it by dragging a box, and we need to change the material. So I'm going to go to the paint tool, and it's already up here, but I think it has you pick it again. So I'm going to pick it here and click on it. Okay, get my select arrow, get rid of, scroll up and get rid of this. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to make a component, and I can call this one my 1 by 4 by 28.5. And you could say, if you want to, you could say floor joist. Okay. Alright, now if you're framing a real house, you would want to, on center, have a board at 16 inches on center. But since this is not a true these aren't 2x4s, and this isn't a full-size wall, and we're not using full sheets, we're just going to make them evenly spaced. So we got to figure out, you know, if this is 30, what was this? 30. Let's look real quick. 36 inches long. How far do we have to space these boards if we're going to put 2 boards in the middle? So you can figure that out by dividing 36. You're going to get 36 divided by, if you want it in thirds, it'd be divided by 3 would be 12. And then you got to subtract the thickness of these. So there's some stuff we have to do. I figured it out for you, so I'll just do it for you, and you can follow along. But before we do anything, we want to make a copy of this and put one here on the end. So I'm going to right click and say copy. I'm going to right click and say paste. And I'm going to snap it. Let's see here. I'm going to snap it. It's kind of hard to see, but if I click my scroll wheel in and orbit, you can actually snap it to right there. That's easier to do. So I snapped this bottom corner, and then it's going to move from there over. So I'm going to go ahead and click one more time, move my board. Okay. And orbit, and it takes a little getting used to orbit and do all this. I'm going to scroll in, and actually it would have been easier for me to snap it on the inside corner, but I think this is going to work. Well, let me just do it from the inside corner. Okay, so I'm going to snap it from this inside corner right here. Okay, now I can snap it to the outside corner and it's going to line up perfect. So if I scroll in and I select this outside corner, and don't be afraid to zoom in so you can see this. It should be perfect. Okay, I clicked and it snapped to there. I'm going to do my select arrow. Okay, that looks good. I just clicked off to unselect it or deselect it. Now we just need to do 2 more and we're done, so bear with me. Here's how we're going to do the next 2. They're going to be 11 inches apart from inside to inside. So here's a trick to do this. You can get your tape measure. So I select my tape measure. You can click right where these 2 meet on this point, and then you can bring it to the right, and you can type in 11, enter. And I don't know if you saw that, but it put a little guide here. You see that little tiny dot? It's a little guide. So then I can get this board again, click and drag over it, and right click and say copy, right click, paste, and I can snap it to this corner in here, and then I can bring it over. So one more time, and I can bring it over and snap it to that line. To that guide point. And you know what? I did that wrong again. That's alright though. This will be good for demo purposes. This will be good. So what I want to do is I'm going to go underneath and I want to snap it right here. Okay, so I'm going to snap there. Then I'm going to move it over and I'm going to snap it there. Okay, so you got to kind of figure out how to work those things, and snap it to the right ones. I'm going to go ahead and pan. Okay, so if I were to measure this, it should be 11 inches. So I'm going to get my measuring tape, and I'm going to snap it right there in that corner, from there to there. And if you look down the bottom right, it tells us that's 11 inches. You could also click on this and do a dimension. So this is what would show you. It would show you how far apart these things are. So I could click there and there and show that, hey, that's 11 inches between those two. Okay. Alright, so one more to go and then we're done. Thanks for hanging in here with me. I'm going to pan. And we want to do this one over 11 inches. And I could go from here over 11 or here over 11 because they're all going to be equally spaced. But it's going to be from this inside to this inside. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my measuring tape once more. I'm going to make sure I snap right there. I'm going to go over and I'm going to type in 11, enter, and it gives me a little guide point there. Now what I'm going to do is get my select tool, click and drag a box. Now if you click and drag to the right, it doesn't select it unless you have the whole thing in that selection like that. But if you just have part of it going to the right, it won't select it. But if you click and drag to the left, it'll actually select the whole thing. So if I click and drag to the left like that, it'd select this whole board. Okay, so I selected it. I'm going to go ahead and right click and say copy, right click and paste. Now there are keyboard shortcuts for this that would make our life easier. For now we're just going to use those tools. Okay, and once again I'm going to orbit by clicking in my scroll wheel. I'm going to snap it right there. Okay, you see that snap point I made? I'm going to click it one more time. I'm going to bring it over. Now let's see here, is that it? Yeah, that's it. So I'm going to snap it right to my little guide point. There it is. Snap. And now, whoa. Okay, we lost it. Where'd it go? Okay, I'm going to click. Alright, oh there we go. Okay, I don't know what it did there. That was weird. Zoomed way in on me. But if you look here, it actually added another dimension, and it shows us, hey, yeah, that's 11. So if we did it right, it should be 11, 11, and 11. So I'm going to add one more dimension just to double check that this right here, from this point to this point, is also 11, which it is. Okay, and that's it. So get to this point and make sure that you save it. And go on. So I'm just going to click Save, SketchUp, Doghouse, Save. I'm overriding one, but you can make a new one and call it Doghouse. And say yes. And then move on to the next video.